pod bay doors, please, Hal.
I'm Jerry Lindegaard.
You got the car?
You bet. Brand new burnt umber Sierra.
You want your own wife kidnapped.
Her dad, he's real well off.
So why don't you just ask him for the money?
See, these are personal matters.
Personal matters?
Wait, it's Jerry. I don't know what to do. It's my wife. We gotta talk. It's something hard, geez. It's terrible.
So I got the state looking for a Sierra with a tag starting VLR.
I'm not sure that I agree with you 100% on your police work there, Lou. I think that vehicle there probably had dealer plates.
Jeez.
DLR?
No, they said no cops.
Here's the second one. So we got a trooper pull someone over.
This a new car then, sir?
Oh, it certainly is, officer. Still got that smell.
There's a high-speed pursuit. We got a shooting, and then this execution type deal.
$1 million, a lot of damn money. They got my daughter.
What is it, hon?
Brought you some lunch, Margie. What are those, night crawlers?
Oh, yeah, looks pretty good.
How's Jean? Who's Jean? My wife.
Well, the little guy, he was kind of funny looking.
You were having sex with a little fella then?
Yeah.
Mr. Lundegaard, you mind if I sit down? Carrying quite a load here.
Where's Jerry?
Got your damn money. Now, where's my daughter?
Jeez.
Blood has been shed. We now want the entire 80,000.
I answered the darn... I'm cooperating here.
You have no call to get snippy with me. I'm just doing my job here.
What do you fellas got yourself mixed up in?
Police!
So, is there anything else you can tell me about him?
He wasn't circumcised.
Oh, yeah?
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I am Mr. Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and also ArmchairOscars.com. And as always, seated across the country from me is my intrepid co-host, the critic, historian, and dare I say legend of TalkMovieToMe.com, Mr. Doug Heller. Hey, Doug, how you doing there?
I'm not going to debate you, Jerry. I'm not going to debate. Blood has been spilled.
Geez. We're talking about Fargo today. And oh my God, do I love this movie. with every fiber of my being, do I love this movie. You ask me on a particular day what my favorite movie is, I will generally tell you The Godfather, but catch me on any other day, I'm going to tell you Fargo, because God, how I love this movie.
I do too. So did you hear about the guy who couldn't afford personalized plates, so he changed his name to J3L4304?
Yeah, that's a good one. This is the funniest, bloodiest movie I think I've ever seen in my life. I mean,
yeah. The first time you see it, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to realize it's a comedy. You're just going to think it's weird. But then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, this is a comedy plus murder.
There's something else going on here.
Oh yeah.
It's a commentary on a culture. Because the first time I saw this, I thought, well, this is just a clever little comedy that just kind of excuse me, it does what the Coen Brothers do, which is they go and they get into this, a lot of times in movies like this, they get into a comedy of errors, which is what they do about this and Lebowski. And even Blood Simple was like that. It's mishaps that roll off of a very simple premise.
The humor is a little bit harder to find in Blood Simple.
It's funny in Blood Simple the way that it rolls out. It's like
sure.
Everybody's like Rasputin. Everybody's dead. I mean,
yeah.
it's Fargo is, and I know that a lot of people love Lebowski, but this is my favorite.
This is, I would say that this would be probably at the front of my list for best Coen Brothers movie, followed pretty closely by No Country for Old Men and a few others. but this is really the top of the heap, I think.
And it also brings it back home because
Mhm.
this is their territory. This is
Right.
this is the northern Midwest, and it's an area they know. But
Right. 'Cause
they're
they
also
grew up in Minneapolis.
yeah, yeah, they grew up in Minneapolis. They're very critical also of the culture that takes place here because this whole movie is an upending of what's called Minnesota nice. This idea of people who are folksy, polite. Um, they don't let anything bother them. They don't, now this is generally a stereotype,
Mm-hmm.
but folksy and nice and sweet, and I'm not going to let anything bother me, and I'm just, going to dance my cares away, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to let anger get the better of me. And this movie is a criticism of that because it does present it largely as a stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, it creates an emotional distance between people. There's something like that in the South, where you have people who they don't concern themselves with unpleasant things, so they distance themselves from it.
Mm.
And what that does is it creates a rift, and I believe creates a rift in empathy,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to associate yourself with anything unpleasant. You don't want to associate yourself with anything that is negative.
See, up here in the Northeast, pretty much all we have is negativity. So, I grew up 2.5 hours from both Philadelphia and New York City, and I now live in the Rust Belt. So it's pretty much depression and anger and negativity just seeping throughout the entire. Unless you live in Connecticut and have enough money to not be upset. That's pretty much Connecticut and Vermont. You get to be rich enough to not be negative, but everywhere else in the Northeast is pretty much just.
Yeah. Well, you get this thing where there's a feeling of if everything is polite and nice and sweet and just wonderful and everybody's just as happy as can be, then when something negative does come in, how do you deal with it?
Right. There's a lot of passive aggressiveness.
Yeah.
That goes into that.
When something horrible does happen,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a mindset that thinks like that, you have a lot further to fall.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, for example, if you are always closing yourself off from negativity, and you're doing that emotional distance, and you're just, how do you deal with something like, say, 9/11?
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot harder to fall than those of us who accept the negativity.
Right, and when you're somebody like Jerry Lundegaard, who needs a whole bunch of money to cover himself from contract fraud, loan fraud, with the GMAC stuff, which is why he needs that money. That big smile on his face whenever he's talking, and then these bursts of fits of anger, just when he throws stuff around his office, when he
Scraping
uses his
the
ice scraper. Yeah, that's what you get when all you do is put on a smile and say, "Oh, you betcha, everything's great."
And there are different variations on that. There are variations on that in here,
Mm-hmm.
from several different people, from just several different kinds of characters, and that's what makes this movie special, because every character is an individual and every character is different.
Right.
And this Minnesota Nice is dealt with in different and varying ways.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry does not know how to deal with it.
No.
Because the things are coming down on him, and he's trying to keep up the facade that he always keeps up, the Minnesota Nice, but he doesn't. But there comes a point when he just can't.
Mm-hmm.
because it's all closing in. And it comes down to absolute frustration in that he does not know how to deal with anything.
he I've always been curious, and it doesn't matter to anything at all in the movie. The fact that he has done this basically loan fraud is just that he did it. I want to know why he did it. Did he
I think I
skim
know
those?
why.
Did he skim that money?
I think I know why. I think there are two reasons why. One is that one is, if you notice, everything in his world, everything around him, comes from his father-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes from Wade, who just looks at him like a bug.
Yeah, he owns the car dealership that Jerry works for.
In the job.
He has a very profitable company development. It's never really clear exactly what he does, but land development. Yeah, he's got a lot of money, so he's got his hand in a lot of things. And Jerry just pretty much everything he touches turns to crap.
Yeah.
He is not he's not a smart man.
He doesn't think about the consequences. There's this, but the thing is, he's trying so hard to get out from under Wade.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, the second thing is, he's trying to get something for himself, and he pulls off a scam that a lot of car dealerships did at the time. I think this is supposed to be the late '80s.
It's set in '87,
'87.
before the savings and loan crash. Yeah.
Right. So what's happening is he's writing off these cars for loans, and the cars don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not very good at it. Now a lot of people did this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people did this at the time, and they were very good at scamming. But he's not very good. All he does is he fudges the VIN numbers.
Right.
And he sends it over to him. It's like, and of course you're thinking, well, how did you think that was going to work? How did you think that was going to work? What did you think was going to happen?
He's just the type of person that continues to soldier on and thinks that everything is going to work out the way that he has decided it's going to work out. It's
right.
He's going to get the money. Right, he's going to get the money from GMAC because he fudged the numbers and they'll figure it out. He's going to get the money from Wade because the deal that he brought to him was a good deal and he figured they would just give him the money to do it. He figures that his kidnapping plan is just going to work out just perfectly the way that he has planned it out. The thing that I've always thought was interesting is that he plans out how to get basically like just under $1 million because he's going to give 40,000 to the criminals and this
keep the rest
and this car and keep the rest of $1 million, right? So he's going to have like what, $960,000.
He'll have something to pay back GMAC, something to give to the criminals, and a little something for himself.
But if he has that money all of a sudden, right after this whole thing goes down, how would he explain that?
Right. He never thought about this.
No.
There's a moment in the movie when Stan Grossman asks him, after the kidnapping, asks him, well, how's Scotty taking this?
Yeah, he doesn't even consider it. He's like,
a look on his face, like he never even thought about this.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you about this scene, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a moment in the movie. Now, the visual language of this film is brilliant because we're always asked in the crime part of it to be voyeurs.
Mm-hmm.
visual texture of this film is brilliant because you always see the more serious secret conversations taking place at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
When you see Wade and Stan and Jerry talking about how they're going to deal with the kidnappers, you're sitting at the next table.
Right.
When he's trying to practice the conversation when he's trying to practice the conversation that he's having with Wade to tell him the kidnapping has happened, you're looking at it from over the banister into the kitchen. It's always at a distance, but it's always very voyeuristic.
It's very observational.
Right. And also, when anybody talks to Jerry, either they're not looking at him, or he's in a shot by himself. So it's like this isolation that takes place. So there's this like I say, the visual language works. Now there's a scene where he's talking to Wade, where he first sees Wade, and he comes in, and he talks to Jean, and she says, "Dad's here." There's a look on his face. There's a look on his face. He's here. He goes in the living room, and he's standing behind the chair. Wade is sitting in his chair, watching the Gophers game.
Mm-hmm. Drinking a beer.
When I watched this the last time, I got indignant about that moment.
Well,
and this says something about me.
He's like, is he staying for dinner? Dad, are you staying for dinner? Yeah. It's like...
See, I got indignant about this because this is how I am. You're in my house, in my chair, drinking my beer, watching my television set, and you can't be bothered to stand up and acknowledge my presence.
Well, that's because
That's the thing.
That's because
That's the thing with me.
Money. I think he feels entitled to whatever's there because it's money that is earned through his dealership that he then pays to Jerry. So it's basically he feels like his money's paying for everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. And he probably bought this house.
Probably.
That's what I was thinking in my mind when I was watching this because I got indignant and I thought, wait a minute, he probably paid for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he did pay for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, but
in one way or another, his money is what has purchased all of that because Jean doesn't work.
Right. She's a housewife.
So.
But it comes down to this, and I wanted to ask you about this. Do you think any of this would have happened if he had just been decent to Jerry?
No. I don't think it would have because
just been a human being.
Like the part when he was like, have you had a chance to look over this deal? And he goes, I give that to Stan Grossman. And he goes, I did, but I was wondering if you looked at it. It would be really good for me and Gene and Scotty. And he just glares at him and he says, Gene and Scotty never have to worry. It's like, ouch.
Yeah, see, yeah.
Ouch.
None of this would have happened. If he's just been a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you get where Jerry's coming from a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He makes stupid decisions, but you get where he's coming from. It's not like he's just doing this to make the money. And but the problem is the plan that he puts in place is one of those things that, in theory, probably seemed, based on his desperation, probably seemed very sound, but in logic makes no sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're paying known criminals,
yeah,
to kidnap your wife, and then
even the criminals don't understand it.
Yeah. You're like, why don't you just get the money from your father-in-law or your wife? Yeah, your wife. It's like, well, they don't know I need it. Well, that's the point. If they don't know you need it, tell them you need it, and then you can get it. I mean, if his father-in-law knew about it, he'd be fired because he's taken his dealership
Right.
and his name into the arena of loan fraud.
Right.
But,
Right.
like, I don't. It's yeah. They don't get it, and then, you're not shocked when Gene ends up dead. You're not.
I was a little bit. I was a little bit.
The first time I saw it, I kind of was, but then I'm like, well, they left him with the guy that has killed everybody up to that point until Steve Buscemi's character Carl shoots Wade and the parking attendant.
Yeah.
Um,
There are 7 murders in this film, 5 of which are committed by Gare, and 2 of which are committed by Carl.
right. And so it's like you get back and you see her dead on the floor. It's like, well, what did you expect from the guy who shot a state trooper in the head, ran down 2 other people, shot them execution style?
Killed a woman in the car, which
Yeah.
was upside down.
Yeah. I mean...
But here's the other thing. A red flag should have gone up. Because when he walks into that bar, there are 2 people and he's expecting one.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that he didn't expect is the one that does all the talking.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been a red flag. My red flag would have been, this guy's a cop. That would have been my red flag. I'm like, okay, something doesn't smell right here. When Jerry is so desperate, he just doesn't ever think about that. And the funny thing is, now, we should talk about the Coen Brothers when they do this thing. They open this film with a Hitchcockian joke.
Yes.
Because the very first thing you see is this text that says this story is true.
Yes.
Which is crap because it's not true.
None of it is. Some instances might be based on a few things that actually happened somewhere. Mm-hmm. But that's once you realize it's not a true story, once you find out it's not a true story, then you realize how funny it is.
Yeah. It's very Hitchcockian because it's like they're putting in your head that this is real.
Right, because William H. Macy talked about it in a documentary. He goes, I'd like to see the case files of the actual case. And whichever one he was talking to was like, yeah, you can't. He goes, well, there's got to be something. He goes, no, this isn't real. He said, but you say it's real. He says, yeah, but it's not. But you can't do that. He goes, why not?
It removes from your brain the idea of this being so absurd because you're thinking...
Well, it's the whole truth is stranger than fiction kind of thing.
Right. So you're thinking, okay, well, if this truth is stranger than fiction, this has to be real.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie just... It's kind of a really beautiful opening because it goes from that text into a snowblind landscape that could have come out of a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the music that we hear is a Norwegian folktale called The Lost Sheep.
Once upon a time in the great wilderness of Minnesota and North Dakota, there were 2 men who were hired.
Essentially, if you listen to the music starts with this beautiful harp solo. And it goes into this violin solo. And you can see way off in the distance a pair of headlights. And again, this movie's all about distances. The headlights disappear. And then the top of the car reappears over the hill, and then the music goes, bomb, 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 and then it goes into the score. It's coming and it all becomes clear
Mhm.
what's going to happen. And this car passes it, and he's pulling the burnt umber Sierra, and he arrives. I believe it's in Fargo, where this club is, and he arrives.
Yeah, I think so. Or it's in. It might be in Brainerd.
He arrives at this club called the King of Clubs,
Mhm.
where he's going to make the deal.
Mhm.
And then he goes in, and sight and sound. Oh, you got to listen to it. The song that's playing when he comes in is "You Can Keep Your Retirement and Your so-called Social Security." It's an old Earl Haggard song. You know, this movie is not subtle. It is telling you everything. You know, with the visuals and with the language, and it's just kind of brilliant the way that it opens. And then he goes to the table, and he's late. Did you notice how much beer they're drinking?
Well, Gare peed 3 times already.
There's like 10 bottles on the table. Okay,
Yeah.
how much beer did they drink in an hour?
It's like it's and the whole thing is like you're an hour late, and he goes, "Well, no, Shep told me 8:30. Told us 7:30. Oh, must be a mix-up then. He told me 7:30. He's told me 8:30. Must be some kind of mix-up then."
And he keeps bringing it up.
Yeah.
And he sits down and he thinks that this is he apparently thinks that they're good to go on this. That they're not going to ask questions. Because he sits there and he's like, okay, well, burnt numbers here. Here's the keys. No, that's not it. That's not it. And it's like you've got some explaining to do.
Well, also he's
Your
like, "Well,
own
where's the 40,000?" He goes, "Oh, this isn't a whole pay up front kind of deal. This is you know, you get the 40,000 after the ransom because that's where it's coming out of." And
You get to this poor guy who just, as we said, he just cannot have anything for himself. And
he is at his dim wit's end.
Yeah.
He
I don't think anybody could have played it like William H. Macy.
Oh,
because
no.
A ball of frustration and fear and stress through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it is weighing heavy on that Minnesota night, and he's just so frustrated at all times. I love that scene, and I applaud Roger Deakins for this. When he thinks, when he puts the plan in motion, and then he thinks that Stan and Wade are going to go in with him on the investment deal,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't turn out the way he wants it.
No, they offer him a finder's fee.
Right.
Like
And
a
he walks
finder's
out.
fee, that's like 10%. That's not going to do it for me.
I need the principal.
It would still be like $75,000, but
And it's not even a third of what he needs.
right, since he scammed like $350,000 from GMAC.
And then he goes out to this car in that brilliant shot,
Oh,
that snowy parking lot where he's parked in the middle. And he walks out there and he sits
right.
in his car. You just see
There's no cars, and he still parks far away from the building, so that if somebody else comes, they can park close to the building.
Right. And he's just sitting there in the car, and you see the back of his head, and the ice is on the windshield. The ice is like how he saw this whole thing. It's like you can't see anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just frosted over. It's all, you know. And then he gets out and he tries to get the ice off the windshield, and it just gets so frustrated. He just starts slapping it around. And it's just like you feel bad for the guy, but at the same time you're thinking, you know what, you got yourself into this. And this is before he realizes that he can't call off the kidnapper.
Right.
So it's almost gonna get worse.
He is he is one of cinema's greatest schmucks.
Mm.
He is. I mean, it's ultimately it's a movie about Jerry Lundegaard.
Yeah.
The character of Marge Gunderson.
But we
that,
haven't even mentioned up to this
no,
point.
that Frances McDormand plays doesn't come in until halfway into the movie, and she just overtakes
It's 30 minutes.
Yeah, she's like she's in 2/3 of the movie. Like there's a full third that she's just not there, and when she comes in, it's a force of nature. She just comes in, and the movie is hers immediately.
Well, and before she comes in, we are privy to the problem of Carl. Because everything that goes down, everything that goes wrong in this plan, from the time he gives him the keys, and by the way, when he hands over the keys to those guys, from that moment on, the entire plot is out of Jerry's hands.
Mm-hmm.
He does not have control over this situation at all from that moment on. Because everything that happens, everything that goes wrong with it is because of Carl.
Mm-hmm.
Because of something that he does. They go to Minneapolis, and they pick up the hookers and all of that stuff. Now they have evidence of where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now they have testimony of where they've been, and then they end up going out to go to Moose Lake, and they have even the kidnapping itself. You know, it's just a comedy of errors.
Oh yeah, like I love it when he comes up, and he's looking in the windows, because when you're looking into a window, especially when it's just like all snow outside, it creates a mirror effect. So he's there looking in, and she's just kind of staring at him like, "Oh, who's that now?"
She's just sitting on the couch. She's just looking, and this guy, a ski mask, just comes up, starts looking in the window, and he sees her, and he just.
I don't even know if he saw her. But he breaks in, and then she screams, and then Gare comes in through the front door, and she runs up the stairs. She gets into the bathroom. She has the phone. The phone gets yanked. Then there's a Shining homage with breaking in the bathroom door and thinking that she escaped out the window. She was in the shower. Yeah, I mean that's a good
Did he hear
diversion.
Her? Because he's looking for something, because she bit him. He's looking for something in the medicine cabinet.
Unguent.
And he closed unguent. He closed the window, or he closes the medicine cabinet, and he's looking in the mirror. Did he see something or hear something?
I think the curtain moves.
Okay. Because I was like, something tipped him off that she was in there.
Mm-hmm. And see, that is the smartest thing she does in the entire movie, because then she jumps out, and then, you know, like a ghost running around, and she falls down the stairs. When they get her to Moose Lake, she runs away. She's handcuffed or tied with a bag over her head. She can't see anything, and yet she still thinks she's going to run away.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know she's desperate, and I know she's scared, but there's no thought that goes into her actions.
Right, the Minnesota Nice. You never considered bad things. You never considered what you would do if somebody broke in your house.
And she doesn't seem to be an extraordinarily intelligent woman anyway.
No.
No. I mean, she did marry Jerry Lundegaard, who is not a smart man.
And there's also the possibility that Jerry married her because her father had all the money in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's that
and he knocked her up.
True.
Scotty may not have been part of the original plan.
Right. Because did you ever notice, I don't think they're ever, except for maybe once, they're ever together in the same shot. She's usually over his shoulder. She's usually out of focus. They're never together. She's just there. And doing whatever it is she does. And he never really seems to consider her on a personal level. She's just functionary.
Yeah. Like, I Jerry's not smart, and Jerry Lundegaard is not smart.
Thank you.
I realized that partway through that sentence. I'm like, boy, this could be misconstrued.
Could be taken two ways.
Jerry Lundegaard is not smart, and he just doesn't consider anything but his own problem.
Right.
Like, does he love Jean? Maybe, but he's willing to put her. He's willing to put her in harm's way without even really thinking that anything could go wrong.
But also bear in mind, he thought that this crime was going to go like clockwork. He thought this crime was going to go 1, 2, 3, ABC. He never thought there was going to be complications. Because Shep vouched for him.
Yeah.
Shep vouched for him. What else does he need?
I always kind of wanted to see the conversation that happened with Shep at the outset.
Yeah, how did it come up?
Like, did he go up and Shep, I'd heard that you had done some jail time, and I wondered if you knew anybody that...
You sound like an Irish priest.
Well, Irish is this. I was going more for Swedish. Do you think that you
Maybe
could
you could help me out here?
Yeah, maybe you could help me out there. You know anybody who could kidnap my wife? And Shep doesn't care about anything. He's
right.
Just
Don't
I love it when Marge is questioning him. Do you remember getting a phone call here? Nope. Well, it was after 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd think you'd remember it. Nope.
But yeah, it's just he hires these people who are clearly not professional criminals. I mean, obviously, because Shep spent time in prison, and they go out. They're headed to Moose Lake, and that's when this thing completely goes haywire.
It really, to say it goes sideways would actually be underselling.
He does two stupid things. One, he doesn't put the dealer tags on.
Mm-hmm.
And two, he tries to bribe the cops. And in that moment, Gare is a creature of instinct. He is just he's a creature of instinct. That's why he commits this murder, because it's like they're in that moment under their situation, there was probably no way out of it.
There might not have been.
And it's shocking because he just grabs this guy by the collar, pulls that gun out of the glove box, and just pops him in the head.
And the blood just kind of spurts out into poor Carl's lap.
And Steve Buscemi is just like, "Oh, daddy," because this thing just went to another level. you know, and then those two people drive by, and oh my God, those two people drive by, and Gare again acting on instinct, chases them down, and up to that point, this is a pretty typical crime movie. The crime is set in place. It goes bad. People are murdered. Things happen. This is where the whole texture of the movie changes.
Yeah.
Because the next scene is where we're introduced at 3 in the morning to Marge.
Yeah.
Because the entire feel of this movie up to this point has been very cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's been very, because of what's going on. You're inside the world of these criminals. And then all of a sudden, you step outside the world of the criminals, and you meet Marge, and she is so sweet.
She's sweet, and she has an incredible relationship with her very loving husband.
Right.
She's pregnant. She's chief of police. She's just the sweetest woman, but she's also an incredibly good at her job.
The minutia of this relationship is incredible because we don't have to establish a lot.
Right. You gotta have a breakfast, Margie.
I'll make you some eggs. You know, he gets up and he does it. He does this thing. And they do this wonderful shot where you see the table. He's made her some eggs, and by the way, he didn't make anything for himself.
No,
he
he
makes
ate.
her some eggs. He ate hers.
Oh.
Because when she goes down the stairs, he pulls the plate across and he starts eating it. But you see this one shot where you see on the left is the table and the two of them. She gets up, goes down the stairs.
And out the front door, and you can see
out the front door.
out the front window, her trying to get in. Hon? Yeah. Prowler needs a jump.
Yeah. So they have established a marriage, the minutia of a marriage, in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that their kind of backstory was that they met while they were on the force, and when they got married, they decided that only one of them would stay on at the police force, and it was her because she was a better police officer. So he left and started to do duck paintings.
Right, the wilderness painting, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And but the relationship between the two of them, every time you see the two of them, you never see them apart.
Mm-hmm.
They're always in the same shot.
Mm-hmm.
At all times. She is very folksy, very talkative, very open. He's very shy. He doesn't talk much.
Right.
And but every time you see them, first of all, every time you see them together, they're either cuddling or they're eating.
Or a bit of both.
Or a bit of both. Because there's a scene where she's sitting in her office, and you know it's the one where he brings the Arby's,
mm-hmm.
and she's sitting in the office, and he's there with her, and they're in the same shot, and Lou comes in and starts talking to them, and Norm does not look at Lou.
Right.
He keeps focused on her,
mm-hmm.
but they're always in the same shot.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time, if I recall, the only time he ever speaks to anybody else is when that other police officer asks him if he's ice fishing. But outside of that...
Well, no, Lou comes in and says, how's the painting going? He goes, oh, pretty good.
But he never looks at it.
That's true. Yeah, he goes, no, I'm going after lunch.
Going after lunch,
They're at this buffet where they both have these...
Yeah. By the way, one of the characters in this movie is the food. My God.
Yeah. It's... Because not only we're introduced to her and we're introduced to him, you gotta eat a breakfast, I'll make you some eggs. And then the next time we see him, she brings him night crawlers. He's sitting there. He's like, I brought you some lunch. Now, I'm gonna. I'm looking at this like, okay, so they eat eggs at like 3 in the morning,
Right.
4 in the morning, whatever. She goes out to the crime scene. They get, she and Lou get into the Prowler, drive into town, go to this place to get night crawlers. They go back to the office, and he's there with Arby's. It can't be much past like 9 in the morning.
Right. Right.
And he's like,
Yeah.
well, I brought you lunch. So then they sit there and they eat Arby's after she brings him the night crawlers. And then you see them
Maybe 10 or 11.
But then they go to the buffet, and he's going ice fishing after lunch. You only buy the bait the day you're going out to the... so they have eggs in the morning, then they have Arby's for like maybe a second breakfast. Like they're hobbits. They have a second breakfast, and then they go to the buffet for lunch, and then he goes ice fishing, and she ends up going to Minneapolis, where the first thing she does after she checks in, she calls the detective and says, "Hey, is there any place for a good lunch in the downtown area?"
Right.
Oh yeah, is it reasonable? I love that question. I love when she says, "Oh yeah, is it reasonable?" I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, if there was ever a more real person in a movie that's not real, it's Marge Gunderson. Like, the way that they wrote her and the way that Frances McDormand brought her to life.
And it observes something that most movies don't observe. Is that if you're on a long drive, the very first thing you do when you get into town is get something to eat.
Or pee.
Usually when you're driving, you're doing a long drive, usually, yeah, or you go to the bathroom. But that's usually the first thing you'll do is get something to eat. If she stops by Arby's. Or no, she starts by Hardee's. And it's
oh,
but the
Hardee's.
The funny thing about this character is, and I quote Gene Siskel, they have written a character here who is so interesting. We'll follow her anywhere.
Oh, anywhere. Anywhere. Anywhere.
And the funny thing is, this crime is something she has to do, but it's not an obsessive thing.
She is not her job.
Right.
And that is where this really sets itself apart from from police procedurals. She's clearly good at her job. She can see the footprint. She sees the execution style. She sees this is smaller. Different sizes of footprints. She's like, oh, this was a big fella. Oh, he's a lot smaller. Oh yeah, and like Lou had no clue what to do to figure out the clues. And then they're driving, and he's like, yeah, DLR, we got an APB out for the license plate starting DLR. And he goes, she's like, well, Lou, I don't know if I quite agree with your police work there. Yeah? Yeah. It's a dealer. DLR? It's like, it's just, she quick goes there, and everybody else is about 4 steps behind her.
And as I was breaking that scene down last night, I thought, she's trying not to hurt his feelings. Mm-hmm. Because he got it wrong. Mm-hmm. So she diffuses it with a joke. Mm-hmm. Because he's sitting in the passenger seat of the car with this 1,000-yard stare. How did I miss that?
Oh.
Oh. Yeah, that's a good one. You just cannot. Like, how did I miss that?
it's she's she is singularly the smartest person in this movie. And
barely even thinks about it. It's like she walks in.
It's just second nature.
It's just second nature.
And
but she kind of clues in. There are two conversations that are key to this, and both of them are the ones that she has with Jerry Lundegaard. Because the first time she walks in, she asks him, "Have you had any cars go missing off the lot?"
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay. And she stands up and she, "Let's get back to your paperwork then," because she knows she can see
Just doodling.
And she stands up and she leaves.
Yeah.
In between the first interview and the second is a scene that troubles most people about this movie. She gets a phone call from a guy that she went to high school with, Mike Yanagita, played wonderfully by a stand-up comic named Steve Park. I think was on who was on In Living Color, and she meets him in this hotel
at the Radisson.
The Radisson, and this moment that they're together, and I think he used to date her.
I think he used to have a crush on her. I don't think he ever dated her.
He talks about this girl named Linda Cooksey,
Mm-hmm.
and he said he married her, and then she died of leukemia.
Right.
But there's this moment when he's talking to her. He gets up and he walks over to the other side, and he sits down.
He's
and
like,
do you
mind if I sit over here? She's like, no, I'd rather
Sit
you
over
sit
there.
over there. Yeah. And then he's like, oh.
And then she diffuses it by saying, "Oh, what is this? So I have to turn
Just
my
didn't
neck."
want to turn my neck. Yeah. It's like,
And the conversation gets really uncomfortable.
Incredibly so.
Yeah, it gets really, really uncomfortable. And she tries to end it. "Oh, well, it was nice seeing you. We should do this again."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and of course, when a person says we should do this again, that means I don't want to see you again.
Oh, yeah.
And then he leaves, and then she gets a call from somebody else. And it turns out the whole thing with Linda Cooksey was not true.
Right, that he was stalking her, and it's possible that in his mind she had to die in his mind so that he would let her alone.
Yeah.
But then he found Marge on the TV, and I think he just thought that he was gonna start back in with her. And he's like, "Oh, so you married old Norm, son of a Gunderson, eh?"
Son of a Gunderson.
Oh yeah, long time now. I'm expecting, you know.
And he leaves. There is a moment, and this is where Frances McDormand's performance comes in really, really brilliantly, because there's a scene where she's driving her car, and then all of a sudden her expression changes because something in her brain clicks.
Mm-hmm.
If this guy could fool me about this, then maybe I need to go talk to Mr. Lundegaard again.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes back, and she realizes that she's got something on him.
Mm-hmm.
Tantiera has gone missing. Okay, you said there were no cars missing from the lot. It had dealer plates. Did you do a lot count? How do you do inventory? And then she just starts pinning him down. And he is so brilliant because he realizes.
And he's floundering. He's like, I'm cooperating here.
And there's this. He is so nervous he can't even sit still. There's a moment when she asks him a question, and he's looking at her like he's hoping she will just drop dead.
And then he's like, "Okay, you want a lot count? I'll do a lot count. Like right now, yeah. What the Christ?"
Oh, before that, of that, he snaps at her.
Yes, he does.
There is a dead silence. But she just looks at him. There. He's not called to get snippy with me. I'm just doing my job here. And it's just, you can feel that cold. You know?
Yeah. She's, in that moment, you know that she's going to be a great mom.
Yeah.
Because she's
Might be a
already,
great kindergarten teacher.
she's already got it. Yeah.
And he doesn't know where to go. He's got nothing.
Yeah, he drives away. My favorite thing, she's talking to no one, going, he's fleeing the interview. He's fleeing the interview, and she's like going back and forth. He's fleeing the interview. It's like, who are you talking to?
But it's just like, it was just not really putting the evidence together. It was just something that came to her. It's all instinct. It was just something that clicked in her mind. Maybe I really need to go back and talk to him again. Because something didn't add up.
Right. And then, you know, she's thinking that the 2 or 3 things that she's looking into might be connected. And, you know, she starts putting all this together. She's just like, oh, okay. And then
you cut to the criminals, and their situation keeps getting worse. Because Carl won't shut up. Gare never says anything. And when Carl creates a problem, it is usually up to Gare to have to clean it up. And there's this whole, and there's this he keeps leaving clues everywhere. He goes to a bar and he talks to a guy. And, you know, I'm going crazy up at Moose Lake. And, you know, he starts talking to a guy, and it's like, if he would just shut up, everything would be fine.
Right. And then, you know, the fact that he... fact that he pulls a reverse Travis Bickle and takes a prostitute to the champagne room.
Jose Feliciano.
To see Jose Feliciano. No, I'd go see Jose Feliciano too. But I mean, this is have you ever been taken here by a client before? He's trying to impress the prostitute. It's like,
and he doesn't know how to talk to her. So you like that line of work?
Right. He has no idea what to say, but he's trying to treat this like it's a date just so that he can have somebody else to talk to.
Right.
And it's like, I was thinking, like, it's a reverse Travis Bickle where he took prim proper Sybil Shepherd to a porn theater. He's taking
a
prostitute to the champagne room, and it's like they're both completely and wholly out of place where they've been taken, but one is the top being taken into the bottom, and the other one the bottom being taken into the top.
And he is out of place.
He's very out of
place. Because he's the antithesis of the entire Minnesota Night. Because in a lot of ways, and I hate to say this, in a lot of ways he's us. Because he's how we outsiders would regard this Minnesota Night.
Right. Like when he goes in to steal the license plate into the airport parking lot, and he goes, I decided not to park here. What? I decided I'm not going to take the trip. Oh, you think you're in a position of authority with your stupid uniform? Here's your $4.
Yeah. And it's like
he completely misreads the situation because he's just angry and just doesn't.
Right.
He doesn't have time for the Minnesota Knights. He doesn't want to process. He doesn't think that anybody's actually. He thinks everybody's like him.
Right.
And they think everybody's like them.
And he can't get his partner to talk to him. He's trying.
Right.
They're driving to Minnesota, and he's just jabbering. He's like, I've been sitting here for 4 hours, and he haven't said a word. You know, but it's like he gets frustrated by all of this.
And then
This-
I love my other possibility for opening this up instead of I don't want to debate was just yeah, you want to do this? I could do silence. Just sit here in total silence. Yeah, total silence. Two can play this game, buddy. And he still can't shut up.
He still won't shut up. But it all, again, he is maybe the most normal character in the entire movie,
Mm-hmm.
as far as this, sort of our gateway.
He's
Because we
the
would
only
be
one that
frustrated.
outwardly at all times shows his frustration about what's happening.
Right. And he's, again, the one that caves the whole thing. And I think Gare clues into that because he goes back to. And the other thing that happens, the other thing that's going on while this is going on, is the fact that Jerry's unpinning of this whole thing is happening because Wade won't cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole thing
Surprise,
comes together.
surprise. And then all of a sudden, then he takes the whole $1 million over to Carl. It's like that wasn't. They weren't even supposed to know that the ransom was over $80,000.
Right. Right. And Wade didn't think about it, and he goes and he thinks he's got a gun, and he thinks he's going to go. It's my money. I'm going to. No.
Yeah, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't work. And I also love the incredulous reaction. So Carl shoots Wade, and he goes to take the money, and then Wade grazes him in the chin. He's like, "You shot me." It's like, "Well, you just shot him." Like, why are you incredulous about this? Because you just shot him. He's gonna die, and then he shoots him about 4 or 5 more times.
I love some of Carl's dialogue in this movie is great. Is because whenever he's with that prostitute, Chef comes in to beat the crap out of him. He throws the prostitute off and he just, "Hey, I was banging that girl."
Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you?
But no, the whole thing comes unpinned because Wade won't cooperate. He takes the money, he gets himself killed. And then suddenly, Carl realizes that it's $1 million and he tries to stow it away by burying it in the middle of nowhere.
with only an ice chipper to mark it. And yeah, see, that's actually probably the saddest part. Not because that happens, but because there was an actual woman in Japan who saw the movie who thought the money would still be there and died trying to find it. They made a movie about it, Kumiko the Treasure Hunter.
I never saw that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I know that that's what it was about. I was going to watch it on Amazon because it was on Prime, and then when I went to go watch it to prep for this, it was a rental only, and I'm like, well, I don't want to spend money on it.
She thought that because it was a true story.
Right, she didn't know that it wasn't a true story, and apparently didn't know that the snow actually does melt in Minnesota in the winter. Despite the fact that the Coen Brothers refer to Minnesota as Siberia with family restaurants.
Yeah.
There is actually a time frame in which there is not snow. So when it melts, somebody would have seen that case.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I think also, somebody would have seen that. And the other thing is, and again, Carl screws up because all he had to do was go back to the cabin. If he would have gone back to the cabin, simply given Garrett his $40,000, and then left.
Mm-hmm.
That probably would have been fine.
Right, instead of going, oh, I'm taking the car, are we square, are we square?
Yeah.
He stays too long. Yeah, he stays too long.
He does not observe that this is a man who has killed 5 people.
Right, and he just looks over, what happened here? She started making noise.
You know, when I saw the movie the first time, I didn't realize she was dead.
Oh, really?
I thought he just knocked her out. It never occurred to me. that she was actually dead, because it is left it's kind of a little ambiguous because she's just kind of laying on the floor. She could have been not just knocked out. I didn't realize that she had actually been killed, but it just goes completely haywire.
I think at some point she does. Marge says something about the body inside, and that was your partner. I'm assuming in the wood chipper.
No, she says, so that was Mrs. Lundegaard on the floor in there.
Right.
So
You'd think she would have like picked her up and taken her with them if she wasn't dead.
again, his instinct kicks in, and the only thing he can think to do after he puts an axe through Carl's head is to throw him in the wood chipper. It's God Almighty. Oh. The way that scene builds is that she's driving along and she sees the Tan Sierra.
There's the car. What car? My car. Tan Sierra.
But she comes upon him. You don't see it at first. It takes a minute because you're seeing what she sees.
Right.
And it's sort of around the trees. And then
But then you see the blood splatter, and then you see the leg stuck in the chipper at the knee joint. So he takes a piece of wood to try to push it in. It's like if he would have just frozen the body, there wouldn't have been all that blood spray. It would have gone up a little bit easier. But you know, he didn't have that kind of time. So.
Right. And then a scene that I have written about. That scene in the car when she's sitting there talking to him.
Oh.
This should be, or would be, in any other movie, the moment when the villain and the hero meet.
Mm-hmm.
And they discuss.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen.
No.
Everything up to this point that needs to be said has already been said.
Mm-hmm.
Again, going back to the beginning of this conversation, this is where the hammer falls. Because this is where she comes down to the reality.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the Minnesota Nice crumbles and the veneer is taken off, and she's trying to put it together in her mind.
It's like, I just don't understand. Why you could do that? And it's such a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Like,
but, you know, you're wondering, that, and this is the real thing about this movie. After this, you're sitting there and you're wondering, why did they tell us all this?
Mm-hmm.
What was the point of this story? Because generally, the tone of the Coen Brothers films, when you get back to the end, is always, you are always at the end back where you started.
Mm-hmm.
Things have happened, but life goes on, and it comes back and it sort of lands back where it started.
For
7
Marge,
people are dead.
not for Jerry.
Dead. 7 people are dead. 2 people went to jail for it.
Mm-hmm.
Life goes on. And life is a tale told by an idiot, full
Mm-hmm.
of sound and fury signifying nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's a little deeper here than that with this movie.
Right, because we see this
probably,
and it circles around. You get the crime doesn't pay, especially if you're an idiot message.
Right.
Jerry gets caught. You never find out what happens to Scotty, but he probably goes into foster care, or if there's a grandmother somewhere.
and probably has a huge inheritance coming.
Yeah. Probably managed by Stan Grossman.
Yeah, most likely.
And then like you just see like the end. They're watching. Marge and Norm are watching a nature documentary in bed, and they're just talking about how he got second place. He's on the 3-cent stamp, and it's all this really beautiful reassurance and this love.
She ends up back where we met her.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the first thing he said, he's got his arms folded, and he said, they showed it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking they showed the crime on the news.
Right.
No.
But she knows exactly what he's talking about.
Right. And they cuddle up together, and she reassures him because he's upset because he only got the 3-cent stamp.
Nobody uses those small stamps.
I only
Are
got
you
the 3 cents.
kidding? Anytime they raise the postage, people use those little stamps. Yeah, I guess you're right.
And then they talk about, he's just 2 more months.
Yeah.
And by the way, her being pregnant had really
nothing to do.
But it was a wonderful.
It's just part of the character. It's just this character's living her life, and she's going about her business, and she just happens to be pregnant.
And she did the job.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's absolutely.
A tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Yes.
When you get down to this, it's I did my job. I considered the bad things. It's a beautiful day. I don't understand it. And now I'm going to go back to my cozy little place. And tomorrow there'll probably be another crime.
Mm-hmm. But probably nothing quite like that.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to Jerry? Now, I'm imagining in my mind he's probably going to be charged with accessory to kidnapping, possibly accessory to murder.
Conspiracy, for sure.
Definitely conspiracy, collusion, a lot of other things. Fraud.
Yeah, because there's those loans.
Because there's the loans. I don't know how many of the murders would be pinned on him.
Well, I would say definitely Gene's.
The state trooper and the 2 people.
The state trooper and the 2 people, because if he hadn't hired them, they wouldn't have been there driving that car to do that.
Okay. Yeah, and it's probably not going to charge him with the, maybe not the murder of Carl.
Probably not Carl.
Or the ticket. The parking lot attendant. I'm guessing probably 50 years to life.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to get out. And that's why I was like, well, there's that one scene that we talked about. It's like, well, how's Scotty taking this? And it never dawned on him to think about his son.
Right.
And how this would affect him.
Go like
right. But even still, during the whole thing, he's up in his room crying and saying, I really think we should bring the cops in here. It's just like exactly what his grandfather said, almost word for word.
Yeah.
And Jerry never goes into the room. He stays in the doorway. No, it'll be okay. It's I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it's fine. He never comforts him, never puts on the full thing like, "Oh yeah, we're going to, just he's so ambivalent."
Right.
Because he doesn't consider the possibility that it will fall apart.
And he thought the whole thing was just going to go, they would pick her up, take her out to Moose Lake, keep her there a couple of days. The ransom deal would happen. He would take the money. They would meet in the parking lot.
Wade would give him the money. He would give them the $40,000, and then he would take his wife and the rest of the money, and everything would be cleared up. And he thought that would go the same way as his deal with Wade and Stan would go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would give him the money and he would make the investment. It's like, we're not a bank, Jerry.
Yeah, we're not a bank.
We're not just going to give you $750,000 to develop this thing and then not have us get the profits from it. I was like, well, I'll pay you back with interest, 1/prime. It's like, we're not lending. We're not a lending bank. We're a development business. We don't. We're not just going to give you the money and let you take all the profits. We will do this, and if we're putting our money into it, we're going to get money back. We're not just going to get paid back with some interest. We're going to make the profits on this. We're going to see the money.
His character is established right at the beginning. When you see in the office, you see his portrait on the wall with Employee of the Month. And then there's a wide shot where you realize everybody working there has been Employee of the Month. He is nothing. It's like, there's like 40 photographs on the wall, and it's just like Employee of the Month. It's like it's not really even a big deal.
Right, it's like, whose turn is it now?
Yeah.
Well, I had it last month, so it must be Dave's now.
Well, we got to give it to Jerry.
He is basically he's not even the boss. He doesn't even run it.
No.
He's the chief sales manager.
Executive sales manager. What does that even mean?
Like, does he manage the salespeople, or is he just another salesman that also then has to do the other paperwork? Like,
I also thought of this. If you look in his office, which, by the way, there's a brilliant shot where he's on the phone with the Riley Diefenbach, the guy from the financier. There's a scene where you're looking at him through the slats in his and they're turned and they look like prison bars. It looks like a cage. And inside of his office is all of this golf motif, statues and pictures and all of these things. And I kept thinking to myself,
and also horribly racist lawn jockeys. I just thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, racist lawn jockeys. I kept thinking to myself, okay, he's into golf. What exactly does that say? And I thought, well, golf is a game of inches. So he thought that this criminal element would be a game of inches. He thought it would work out measured like a golf game. It's messier and colder than that.
Right, and it's also, if you want to delve into the actual activity of golf, it's kind of a hollow thing that is often used as an excuse to do business outside. It's like, well, we'll hit the links and we'll talk about this deal on playing golf. Only professional golfers and retirees really care about golf. Other people who play it might do it for some recreation, but it's usually tied into business.
Right.
So, of course, he would try to be a golfer because he's trying to be a serious businessman. So his pursuit of it is almost too much. Like, with the horrible racist lawn jockeys and all the stuff going around, it's like, do you really like it, or are you trying to convince others that you really like it because you think that in your position that's what you should do?
Right.
Because most of this is he's trying to get money to put on airs so that he can look like a successful person, so that his father-in-law stops looking down his nose at him.
Or he can just have a sense of agency for himself, have something for himself that is not tied to his father-in-law. I think that's really...
It's ironic that he then tries to get the money from the father-in-law so that he can have something for himself apart from the father. Like,
well, he's trying to screw
still
over his
using... Yeah. And if it works, he would have that kind of smug private superiority that he got one over on
I want to be the one to sit in a house that I've paid for, watch my own television, have my own business, have people, fussing around after me, and have some. Everybody, I think everybody a little bit wants that. A little bit, you want a little bit of to feel like you're the top dog at some point.
And if the deal went through, and the exchange happened the way it was supposed to,
this would never work out, even if it worked out.
Right? No, it couldn't. It couldn't. The only thing that he could do is if he held on to that money and pretended that it was somehow return on the investment of the lot. But I don't think he's smart enough to do that.
Isn't somebody going to wonder after the ransom where he suddenly came up with $750,000?
Right. I'm talking that if Wade went through with the deal the way that he thought he was going to, Wade gave him the $750,000, and he got the $960,000.
Yeah.
He could just say, okay, well, I got this from another investor, or I got this from the profits from the lot. Like, hold on to it until after the lot starts paying, and then funnel that into his profits to make it look like it's business. But he's not that smart.
It's going to fall through no matter how this works out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he's dumb.
There's no avenue where this works out.
Right.
There's no avenue. I mean, somebody's going to smell something.
I think it's great that not only is Jerry Lundegaard stupid, William H. Macy knew that Jerry Lundegaard was stupid, and he played that to the hilt. Like they talk about in this documentary on the Blu-ray called Minnesota Nice. The Coens are like, most actors try to get their villains to be at least kind of smart. Even if they're not, they can't let themselves believe that they're playing an idiot. But Bill Macy just went after the stupidity of this guy full throttle.
Right.
He basically said to them, so he's a total idiot, and he played it that way. He was not, he didn't have any kind of...
he didn't have any cautionary filter.
Right. He wasn't trying to save himself from looking like an idiot by playing an idiot. He just went for it, and
he
got an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, fought for this role because he was just like, I knew this guy. I had this guy down. I knew and he said, he followed the Coens to New York.
Right. He was originally auditioning for that state trooper that comes up on him on the buffet. And they're like, well, you sounded pretty good. Why don't you audition for Jerry? So he came back the next day after staying up all night studying the character, and they're like, yeah, that's good. That's real good. And they didn't give him an answer, and then he found out that they were casting in New York. So he flew to New York and read for them a third time. It's like, nothing says I want this part like stalking the director.
Yeah. He told them, he said, I'm really afraid you're going to screw this movie up by giving this to somebody else.
Right.
Like, now that's confidence.
Yeah.
Now that's confidence.
That is.
I don't know if I could do that. But it is his best performance. And he handles this dialogue beautifully. He handles every line of this movie. There is not a line. There's not a false note.
No, and the funny thing is, they insist that every stammer, every stutter, every half sentence, all of that was written. Like, people think that he ad-libbed it, but all of it was written. Every single fraction of a sentence, every single fraction of a word, every stutter, every stammer. If somebody said one word wrong, one letter off, like when they were doing they were in the car and Peter Stormare thought that there was a typo, and he's like, "Where's Pancake's house?" Bad translation, you would think. But he's like, "Where's the Pancake house?" And Ethan was like sitting in there with his ears, and he goes, "Wait, Peter, what did you say? Where's the Pancake house?" No, that's not the line. Where's Pancake's house? It's like, oh, I thought it was a typo. There's no typos in our scripts.
There's no typos in our script.
And Roger Deakins in the commentary talks about how most of the time scripts at the end of the shoot are like every color of the prism, because every time there's a change, they put it on a different color paper so that they know that it's different from the original.
Yep.
And each script always has like hundreds of different colored pages. And a Coen Brothers script never has a different color than white, because the script that they go in with is the script that they shoot and the script that they come out with. And he even said there has only been a handful of scenes in the movies that he shot with them, from Barton Fink through the commentary was recorded. Yeah, the commentary was recorded in 2008 or 2009. So No Country for Old Men. I don't know if he shot a Serious Man with them or not.
Nominated 14 times.
I'm very happy to say Academy Award winning
and only one
cinematographer for Blade Runner 2049, which looks spectacular. Yeah.
When he won the Oscar, the 90th Annual Academy Awards, when he won the Oscar, there was a rousing applause for him.
Yeah.
Because he is so good and he's so brilliant here, because he does so much with distance, visually. And, I talk about the emotional distance of the characters because of the Minnesota Night, because of not wanting to deal with anything unpleasant. The distances here, the distance motif is so on the surface, because the tagline is, a lot can go down in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of distance.
Not only does he, with the Coens, compose great negative space shots, but do you have any idea how hard it is to light for snow?
And there wasn't a lot of snow because the summer of '95 was extremely warm.
Well, it was the winter of '95. It was like the second warmest winter in 100 years. And all the snow would melt, so they had to make their own snow, which is why it's not as deep as you would expect it to be there. Yeah. But lighting for Snow White to not blow out the film, because this was before digital, they were shooting on 35 millimeter, to bring the f-stop to a point where you can get enough light in to expose the film and not too much to overexpose the film is ridiculous. That's why you hardly ever see white walls in a movie.
Yeah.
Only now do you start seeing that a little bit more. I bet I can't remember who shot it. I think whoever shot One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Conrad Hall or Vilmos Zsigmond, I think, were one of the top guys in the 70s. Must have had an incredibly difficult time, because not only are they shooting on white, but they're shooting on shiny white.
Well, and a lot of Cuckoo's Nest was beige. It was that dingy, kind of clinical white.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine George Lucas with THX on 1138, because a lot of the interiors of that are white.
Yeah.
That might have been just as difficult, because it's hard to really get it. It's easier to work in darker colors.
Yeah.
The cinematographer for Cuckoo's Nest was Haskell Wexler.
That's the Prince of Darkness, which is interesting that he had to shoot on white.
Gordon Willis was the Prince of Darkness.
Oh, that's right. Haskell Wexler was still a brilliant.
Wexler, who I met at Everfest. He was
a
really interesting guy to listen to. He doesn't just talk about his craft. He talks about how he collaborates with his directors.
Mm-hmm.
Deakins does that too. Roger Deakins. He talks about they make his job easier because everything is already set in place
Mm-hmm.
by the time he gets to it. But it's open enough that he has a lot of choices
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the colors he can use, in terms of the framing shots, the characters give him room to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I get so bored. I just saw Tomb Raider last night. I get so bored when I just see a movie that the colors are just just get it done.
Yeah.
Just get it done. I don't really care. Just whatever. People aren't going to care.
Yeah.
I care. I care when they get it right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they get it right, you notice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And that shot, that beautiful shot of that upward angle of that parking lot when he's walking to his car,
Mm-hmm.
had to be the most difficult thing. And also, it's this pure white with these planters like sticking up out of the snow, and this car in the middle of it, and then this tiny figure just walking toward it into this isolation. It's so great. I love it. I love every inch of this film.
Right. It's spectacular. It's definitely one of, I would say, probably even the top 5 movies of the '90s. And one of the best movies I think ever made.
You
And
ever
now that
notice?
we're
I know you and I are like this with the Coen Brothers. We so appreciate the cyclical nature of their films.
Mm-hmm.
This one is probably the one that ends, that roars the least. It ends with a curtsy.
Mm-hmm.
It
Well,
ends a polite
this,
note.
yeah, well, it's Minnesota Nice. The only other movie that kind of fades out in a kind of a unexpected way is their only other one in this kind of tone, which is No Country for Old Men.
Right.
Which I think now we can maybe move into our recommendations. Definitely anything. No Country for Old Men just has this air of funny, grave funny. Like it would be called dark humor, but it's not. It's funny in terrifying situations, which is how this is, and that kind of ends on a well, it literally limps off the screen.
Right.
It's but in a great fashion.
Life goes on.
That doesn't take anything away from it. But literally, Anton Chigurh limps. The movie limps out of frame. It's just, I love that visual.
That frustrated a lot of people.
Yeah, I know, but
It frustrated a lot of people. I love it.
I loved every second of that movie. I've seen that at least a dozen times, if not more. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking for a Coen Brothers movie that you can pair with Fargo, No Country for Old Men is definitely the one that's closest in the vein.
I disagree. I disagree.
Okay.
Because I think the only other movie that I could ever, well, actually, the first movie that I would ever say that you could couple with Fargo would be The Big Lebowski. Because it is similar in tone, but the message is different. I think Lebowski is a lot. We're going to talk about that movie at some point. The movie is a lot more spare, where Fargo is a lot more tightly told, and they end really. And here's the funny thing: when you were talking about No Country for Old Men, I thought of this. The characters in the movie don't know it's a movie.
Right.
So they're trying to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That calls for the end of this movie. That even calls for the end of Lebowski, where even Sam Elliott can't figure it out, and he's just jabbering about nothing. He still can't figure out what happened.
Right.
They don't know what's going on.
The end of Lebowski ruins Lebowski for me, but we'll talk about that when we talk about the movie. The other recommendations that I would have with this, it's hard to recommend anything that's not a Coen Brothers movie in conjunction with this because they are their own genre. But I would say I would recommend the Fargo TV show on FX, which keeps the spirit of this film in so many ways, but it doesn't rehash. There was originally they were going to try to do a Marge and Lou television
I saw it.
series.
It's actually on YouTube. I saw it. It's not bad. But you're considering that this is one of the greatest characters in movie history.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's hard to duplicate. Edie Falco does a fine job. She does
Mhm.
a good job, but it's just, it doesn't feel right.
Right,
Like-
right. But then when they came back to it and did just without any of the pre-existing characters, and you had Martin Freeman giving an incredible everybody, Billy Bob Thornton, and I mean, I've seen the first season and half of the second season, and I still recommend all 3 seasons without hesitation.
I've seen half of the first season.
it's
It's not because I didn't like it. It's because I'm trying to figure out. It's because I'm trying to find time to get back to it.
You're right, right. That's exactly kind of what happened to with my wife and I on the second season. And I want to watch the second season so I can get to the third season where Ewan McGregor plays two different roles that are very different. Like
Oh, now I gotta see it.
yeah, I know. It's apparently incredible how he does whatever he's doing in that. So those are kind of my recommendations. What do you have for us? And then tell us what we're getting into next week.
Well, if you're really interested in this movie, and I mean really interested, take a look at that TV movie because it's proof that you can't. There's some acts you just can't follow.
Mm-hmm.
I love Edie Falco. She's wonderful. But
Yes.
check it out. Decide for yourself if that would have worked or not. The same actor who played Lou in the movie plays him in this TV movie.
Oh, okay.
It's all right. That's really all I've got because there's nothing else really that I can compare.
There's nothing like Fargo. There's really
Nothing like
nothing. There's nothing like.
But
Fargo.
again, if you're going to do a double feature, Coen Brothers double feature, do this and Lebowski because they're so they're like siblings almost, cinematic siblings to me. But next week we're going back a bit, and this is going to be Doug's choice.
Mm-hmm.
We're delving into our very first venture into the world of Charlie Chaplin.
Yay.
We are talking about the Great Dictator.
His first full talkie.
First full talkie. It's brilliant. It's hysterical. It's frightening.
And we're doing it for 2 reasons. I chose it for 2 reasons. One, because April 20th is the anniversary of Charlie Chaplin's birthday. But it's also the anniversary of Adolf Hitler's birthday, so I thought, why not praise the genius and simultaneously deride the arguably the most terrible person that lived in the 20th century, although Stalin did kill more people. I looked at that and I'm like, well, Charlie Chaplin did my work for me. It's like, let's just do The Great Dictator. So that's where we are next week, and I adore that movie.
And after that, the week after that, we're going to get into a movie that is a giant freaking question mark for me. We're going to try to figure out Heaven's Gate.
Which I have not. I think I've seen the first 3 minutes of it.
A movie so infamous and so ill-produced that it destroyed United Artists
And Michael Cimino.
and the autonomy of directors.
Yes.
Michael Cimino,
It ended what I call the decade of directors, which was the 70s.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're gonna put a tighter rein on this, and that was when the resurgence of the studio
Right.
Influence came.
The blockbuster era that we're still living through.
Right. So.
But that's what we got next week
Yeah.
for the next 2 weeks. So So,
So,
Doug here, why don't you take us home there?
yeah, as always, thank you very much for listening. You can find Jerry's writings at armchaircinema.com, armchairoscars.com, and overthinkingoscars.wordpress.com. You can find my writings, Doug Heller, at talkmovietome.com. You can find all of our back episodes of the Pod Bay Doors at www.thepodbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can find the podcast on Twitter at pod_bay. We greatly appreciate you listening to us, and the Pod Bay Doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.